This time in Goss's Garage, we're talking once more to Mr. Rick Robinson from American High Performance in Lorton, Virginia. Now, he builds high-performance engines and cars in general. So we've got some questions for Mr. Robinson today. Rick, welcome to Goss's Garage.
Hello, Pat. It's great to be here.
All right. We're seeing a big swing these days from V8s to six-cylinder to four-cylinder and so on, even in cars like Camaro and Mustang. Do you see this as being kind of a trend for the future?
Absolutely. You know, we've talked for a long time about the demise of the V8. We predicted it 20 years ago when the fuel economy issues really started to impact the performance of our cars. 10 years ago, again, with the fuel prices increasing the way they did, we said, you know, the V8's not going to last much longer. And yet here we are with the most powerful V8 production cars ever built coming out of the factory. So I think the V8's still going to be around for a good while. But when you've got twin-turbo V6s in cars like the Cadillac ATS, that are producing 450 horsepower. When you've got a stock naturally aspirated V6 that'll produce over 300 horsepower, which was more than what the V8s were producing just 10 years ago. I think it indicates that we're going to continue to move in that direction.
You know, it's interesting what's going on here because I can think back, one of my favorite cars that I owned was, of all time, was an '89 Lincoln LSC, the Mark IV, whatever it was at that point. And that had the 5-liter high-performance Ford engine in it. And it was rated at 225 horsepower, which today they criticize four-cylinder engines for that kind of horsepower.
That's right. That's pretty anemic in today's standards.
Yeah.
And like you said, you've got four-cylinder engines that they're getting to those levels without even a turbo on it, and then put a turbo on it, and like the Mustang with the turbo inline 4, it's producing over 300 horsepower.
Yeah, that's pretty amazing stuff. But even at that, these engines can be modified, and you know, if somebody's into it and they don't have the tremendous amount of money that it costs to buy some of these exotic V8s, they could buy a V6 or a 4 and spend a lot less money and build it.
They can. There's a lot more power left in those vehicles. Whenever the manufacturers build a car, they have to build it to a warranty, and so they have to leave a lot on the table, as we say, in order to get the warranty mileage out of those vehicles. So if you're willing to take a little chance on that, then we can easily tune those cars up to produce considerably more than they do out of the factory.
Well, if you look at what's been going on with racing and all such, a lot of the import cars, front-wheel drive, four-cylinders, small engines, they're building those things to do some tremendous numbers.
We just finished the finale event at our local drag strip here called Budds Creek, Maryland International Raceway, called the World Cup Finale. And its nickname is Import versus Domestic. And you line all the import cars against all of the American muscle cars, and they go for it. And there are some incredible little four-cylinder machines screaming down that track, running 7-second, in some cases 6-second passes out of a four-cylinder Honda.
Now, the interesting thing is, of course, that has been kind of a cult situation, and there's a lot of aftermarket parts and so on available for the Nissans and the Hondas and so on that allow these guys to build extreme horsepower out of them. Do you think we're going to see a lot of those parts and everything available for the domestic 4s and 6s?
Oh, absolutely. They're going to have to keep up, because if Detroit is going to compete with the performance that you can get out of those, you look at the kids today. Back in our day, we used to aspire to something as exotic as a Mustang, right? But we settled for a Falcon or whatever we could afford.
Right.
And we tried to build some horsepower into it. Today, they're not doing that with American cars. They're doing that with imports. And we have to bring them back into the fold and get them interested in the four-cylinder and six-cylinder American cars.
Because the potential is there, that's
Absolutely.
for sure.
Absolutely.
And I can imagine if you can get, I guess some of the imports, they're getting 1,000 horsepower or thereabouts out of some of these little four-bangers.
They are. I mean, it's spectacular when they come apart, because they do that often when they push them to that extreme. But it's quite achievable to build a 300 or 400 horsepower four-cylinder motor and drive it every day.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's certainly something to look forward to, because you think of, well, I can't afford the GT350 Mustang or something like that, and well, here's an alternative.
Absolutely. You mentioned the cost. I mean, an SRT8 Dodge Challenger or Charger goes for $60,000. The GT350 goes for $60,000 to $65,000. The 350R is up close to $100,000. It's getting pretty expensive for that big V8 performance.
And so you're looking at, if you were to buy, let's say a Mustang, you buy a four-cylinder Mustang, which is going to start, what, in the 20s?
Right, in the 20s. Mm-hmm.
And so that leaves you thousands upon thousands of dollars that you could spend on it and still be cheaper than the exotic V8.
That's right. You can buy an awful lot of horsepower for another 30 grand.
Yeah. And you could build all of the suspension components and stuff like that so that you wouldn't be losing in the handling and braking.
Right. All of the suspension components, the brakes, all of the other drivetrain upgrades that you make to the car are the same. Same components in the suspension as they are in the V8 cars. Of course, spring rates and things are a little different in the V8s because of the extra weight, but still the basic components are the same. And there's upgrades available for all of them.
Interesting. All right, Rick, I want to thank you for being with us. How can people get in touch with you?
You can reach us over the telephone at 703-339-7412. or find us on the internet at AmericanHighPerformance.com.
And you also have .biz, don't you?
We do. AmericanHighPerformance.biz, your online store for American muscle.
Okay. For more information, and if you have a question that you want answered, check us out at Goss-Garage.com.